Tonight with a major investigation into Adelaide's public transport. Now, the uproar over local bus companies losing contracts to an interstate giant has so far focused on family businesses being sent to the wall. But tonight we're asking whether the losers also include the taxpayer. Well, according to one operator, the accepted practice of handing over student travel details to the large government contractor allowed them to claim subsidies without passing on the benefit to passengers. And as Lucy Polkinghorne discovered, it was only when he blew the whistle that the practice stopped.
There has been discussion of certain matters taking place that could be considered fraudulent.
We have a private transport system in this state which is being strangled by government subsidised bus companies.
I've never come across anything like this in public life.
It's not just Adelaide's small bus operators who should feel cheated by the loss of their contracts to national transport giant Australian Transit Enterprises. It's all of us.
We all pay our taxes for public transport and we're not getting public transport. We're getting private services that are being offered to other users, and the public can't use it.
This is actually a school bus. We're not supposed to take adults on it.
Tonight, we'll reveal how SA taxpayers have been taken for a ride, defrauded by a major government contractor.
What have you discovered?
I believe that I have discovered certain cases of double dipping, rorting the system.
And we'll show you how this rorting has been going on under the nose of two government departments, including the senior ministers responsible.
We did raise it with authorities several times, but to no avail. Nobody wanted to act on it, and in fact we were informed that it wasn't happening, and which was quite surprising.
For a number of years, interstate bus giant ATE, operating in Adelaide as Southlink, Transit Plus and Link SA, have won an increasing number of metro and regional government contracts. In doing so, have muscled in on small contractors like Dean McGuinty's Lofty Coaches, who are independently servicing the private school runs.
We supply our own buses, so we buy our own buses and operate all services 100% funded by myself.
Now, many local operators have been run out of town and the government has colluded.
They have used their assets that they have gained through their metro contracts, so they have depots and all the administration supplied by the government. Of course, therefore they can tender for my services without that cost, so they have a large cost advantage.
As taxpayers, it means that there's a continual drain on the public purse, that we are having to put up monies to provide vehicles, to provide depots, to provide infrastructure, and then also to pay for staff.
We'll come back to the private use of public assets later, but first, much more serious matters. The use of phantom buses to collect taxpayer subsidies for services that didn't exist.
We were performing a school bus run for a school here in Mount Barker, and with that run was a contract between ourselves and the school. That run was being 100% paid for by the school, and the information now reveals that that particular school bus run was also being paid for by the government, and it was being paid to ATE.
How do you know?
We found invoices that ATE was sending to the government to claim student reimbursements for the students that we were carrying.
What Dean McGuinty has suspected for years was last week confirmed by documents received under Freedom of Information.
What do these Freedom of Information documents tell us?
Well, they tell us what we have suspected all along, and that is that ATE have charged the government for a school bus service, in fact over $8,000 for the month, and they did not do the service.
In April 2008, Dean's company took over a series of private school runs in the Adelaide Hills. 3 months later, ATE became the government contractor for public bus services in that region.
We were performing the service, and it was a private school bus service, and what we were required to do for ATE was to supply them information as to who we had carried on what day and the numbers of passengers we had every day.
To Dean, it seemed very odd to be handing over their passenger details to another bus company.
We were advised that this was the way to do business when we took over, which was quite strange, and we also have supporting documents to show that this has been going on, and roles and students' names have been passed to other operators in this area beforehand.
His suspicions led him to discontinue the practice, and that's when ATE, operating as Link SA in his region, flexed their muscles.
ATE actually own and operate this area, the Hills area, and therefore if anybody else wants to perform services in that area, they must have permission from ATE.
However, they knew Dean had realised they were submitting his student details to the government and claiming subsidies they weren't entitled to.
ATE were quite concerned that, number one, we had worked out what they were doing, and number two, that they were frightened that we would use this information against them. So it would appear it was in their best interests to let us continue the service.
Over the next 3 years, ATE steadily gobbled up many private school runs, sending local bus companies to the wall.
To date, I believe it is approximately 20 contracts that have been lost to members of our association. Some of those people operating for up to 55 years.
Roger Quincy, the president of the Bus and Coaches Association, has seen his industry decimated and is horrified by what's been happening.
I would have thought it would have been a case of double dipping. Someone to receive monies for not providing any service except providing a piece of paper to a department would appear inappropriate for the sums of money that have been changing hands. I believe there are other cases of what could be considered double dipping occurring within the region of Adelaide and regional Adelaide.
As the pressure mounted, Dean saw no alternative but to fight back.
We've raised it with the Minister for Transport, Pat Conlon, once. We've also raised it with Rod Hook twice. All 3 times they've come back with the answer that there is nothing fraudulent happening.
However, Dean's now got the phony invoices submitted by Link SA and paid by the Department of Transport, detailing his passenger names, school and pass numbers, earning Link SA over $7,000 a month for doing nothing.
That's $70,000 or $80,000 a year for a service that they didn't perform, and once again, it's just our taxpayers' money just being thrown down the drain.
And these are Dean's actual invoices to St Francis de Sales School covering the payment for that service, for which Dean believes the school received no benefit from any subsidy paid to Link SA.
Do you believe the government knew that this was happening?
In my eyes, yes. Yes, they certainly would. It's too much money to be paid out and not be aware of this problem.
And to rub salt into the wounds,
from the information on the invoice, it shows that all these profits were going to a Queensland-based company.
This isn't the only evidence of questionable practices. There's also a series of invoices created to make it appear Link SA was providing a service to Lofty coaches for this school run. In fact, they were nothing but a round robin of accounts which cancel each other out.
Dean McGinty, when he purchased the business, did that for I think 3 months until he realised that he had some concerns about that. So that's when he had a meeting with Link SA operators.
Dean discontinued the practice when he realised it was dodgy.
I've never had any awareness of an issue this serious where indeed the funds paid out by the taxpayer aren't being used as the way they should be.
Stephen Griffiths is the Liberal spokesman for Transport. He's been raising questions on Dean's behalf for months.
Supposedly a thorough investigation has occurred, but the evidence seems to support a very different situation.
What we've shown is just a part of this scandal. ATE are running phantom buses, which you pay for, but won't appear on any timetable and which you're not permitted to catch.
So this is not a public bus?
They got very strict with school, particular school. 880F is a school service bus. So they're required to catch a normal service bus, is that correct?
Essentially, the taxpayer is paying for these phantom bus runs, as these bus services are heavily subsidised by the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is footing the brunt of the bill.
Tomorrow night, we'll examine what's actually going on with our public transport, question whether this company should hold the government contracts it does, and what Ministers Pat Conlon and Jay Weatherill have done to investigate these matters.
A forensic examination would probably be a good idea.
We, the Bus and Coach Association, request that there be a full and independent audit into the operation of passenger transport, bus transport in South Australia.
Well, Lucy Polkinghorne with that investigation, and in a statement today, Link SA said their dealings with the government regarding concessions were transparent and done in good faith, and said they'd be more than happy to cooperate with any inquiry undertaken by the department.